Just a disclaimer, the opinions expressed in this podcast are our own views and views of our guests. Nothing in this podcast is to be taken as legal advice.
Your LexisNexis legal research and AI technology experience is now even more powerful with Lexis plus AI, now with Protégé, your personalised AI assistant that will transform your legal work. Find out more today at lexisnexis.co.nz.
Kia ora tēnā koe and welcome to That's Just Criminal with me, Annabel Cresswell, and my co-host,
Sumudu, Thode.
And Sumudu, who do we have in the studio today?
We've got Kirsten Gray, who is a barrister in Christchurch, and I'm so excited to have you here, Kirsten. Thank you so much for saying yes to this.
I felt like I kind of had to.
You're here under duress, and I appreciate the honesty. Thank you.
No, it's an absolute pleasure to be here.
I remember when Annabel and I met you down in Christchurch, and you were just so animated, and there was just this amazing vibe about you. I was like, I have to go find out who she is. Then I found out it was you, and the fangirling started at that point. And we're still going, and it's been like 2 years. So I'm really excited. Thank you.
Well, your talk was also pretty exciting and very engaging, and I loved the fact that you were talking about the David Bembo trial.
We were talking about podcasts.
So let's tell our listeners a little bit about Kirsten Gray.
Well, she's in Christchurch. She's mainly doing criminal jury trial work, which goes into the topic that we're talking about, which is dealing with hard cases. So judgment, ethics, resilience, and what we learn from those difficult cases. And basically, I mean, we need a strong stomach, but do we need a strong heart? Annabel, what's one case that sort of stuck with you when you're talking about difficult cases? Like, what comes to mind?
I always think about a young Māori boy who went to see his therapist, who was a 43-year-old woman, and she gave him a hug and it turned into having sex. And then she panicked afterwards and said she'd been raped by him. She called the police, and eventually, so I'm saying he was innocent. Eventually, she actually confessed that she had made it up. But anyway, we're not here to talk about my stories. Kirsten, what's yours?
It's all our trauma that we're sharing tonight.
Yeah, that was a trauma dump. One of the jury.
You do the best that you absolutely can, but the cases where you, at your core, think this person is absolutely innocent, when you can say, look, I know this hasn't happened. And those cases are the ones that you just lose sleep over. I had one that actually did go to trial, and I picked it up. I got a ring from Legal Aid saying, can you do a JAT? It's 2 weeks, all ready to go. And I thought, oh yeah, sure, it's a JAT, no problem. Got the file and heard that there were 4 counts of rape, some indecent assaults, and it was a young guy in his early 20s charged in relation to a family member. And it was a judge-alone trial, which was the first point at which I was like, no, I just don't, A, I'm not going to be ready to proceed on those charges, and B, I don't think a judge-alone trial is the way to go. And we ended up going through the entire trial. And when you see the families and you see the impact that just the entire process has on people, there are cases that keep you up at night. And it's like those sorts of things are just,
yes,
they stay with you forever, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what was the deal in that case?
I think it was a really complex family situation. One of those cases that, to my core, I believed he was innocent. And the complainant, I think the thing about juries is that they tend to know when they're being lied to. And if they have examples of being lied to, and it doesn't matter what it's about, but if they think that something doesn't make sense or that someone's lying to them, it just unravels trials. And in that case, she made some comments about people being around or not being around, which we were able to show were not true. And he actually got off everything. And it was just the greatest sense of relief I think I've ever had, just knowing for him and his family that his life wasn't going to be destroyed by going to prison, because he literally would have been destroyed in prison.
Yeah. And actually, even the system kind of, even going through that system, that would have been at least a year of his life. So it kind of
Oh,
does
at
destroy
least,
you
yeah.
probably, but not in the same way that prison would.
And it's the impact on the parents and, all the family as well, which is not just about the person going through trial. Those parents' lives would have been on
Oh,
pause,
it's
so to speak, as well.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it's not a year that this takes. It's certainly down here. I would say 12 to 18 months. You'd be lucky if you get through trial in that kind of time frame. And
Oh,
as a
whangarei,
parent,
2.5 years, and you'd be lucky to get to trial at the moment.
yeah. And as
Yeah.
the parents of these people, they're just like, we can't understand. We can't understand why we're here or how this has happened. Sometimes it can be very grueling.
Sumudu, do you want to do yours or
More trauma dumping. Oh, look, it's very similar to both of you. I can think of two cases, both of them sex cases, both of them where, like, in my gut, I knew that the complainants weren't telling the truth, but it's like my gut's not enough to put in front of the jury, but it just adds this extra layer of pressure to us where you just know. And one was a case where the complainant was this 9-year-old, gorgeous blonde girl. And my client had immigrated to New Zealand quite recently. And, the imbalance of that. And I knew that that was going to play into the jury as well because he had an interpreter. And, he was saying things that just didn't, like, it sounded bad, but I knew like it just wasn't anything dodgy. And the complainant was just this beautiful girl who you just couldn't shake her. But I was like, you're just lying through your teeth because we had other witnesses that showed otherwise. And then another recent case, which is very similar. And I think that makes it really hard in front of a jury. It's the prejudice that plays into people's minds. But for us, it's just hard because I don't know, you just know, and both of those cases have kept me up at night. One of them was found guilty, the other one was not guilty. And that not guilty, those verdicts, like I wanted to cry
Mm.
because I was like, thank God this guy's not going to go to prison.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah, yeah.
God that, like, because I mean, the thing with, sex cases, you're looking at least 6 to 8 years minimum in prison, and then some. And so this moment, and I hate jury verdicts, like, I don't care what the verdicts are. I hate it where the defendant's standing in the dock. You're like, literally, you could walk out of here and that's
Mm.
it. Or you could go out the side door and you go to prison and that's it. Like there's no gray area. It's freedom or prison. And I don't know how it's going to go. There's so much pressure and the emotions build up. And sometimes jury members come out and they're crying and you're like, oh, I've got to hold it together.
Kirsten, have you ever felt like crying or have you ever cried after a verdict?
I remember when I was prosecuting and Barry Hart was defending this guy, and the complainant, she said she'd been raped, she was a child. And one of the issues was it was in a bunk bed and there was someone in the bunk bed above. And I remember the jury came back and he was acquitted, and I was absolutely sure that he'd done it. And I remember the judge actually thought that they'd said guilty. And so he was rather than not guilty. And we were kind of quite astonished by the verdict. But anyway, it's one of those things. And I remember just afterwards, Skitos took me out the back and just, had a chat about the verdicts. And I remember just going home and I was just so gutted. And you feel responsible. You feel that
Yeah.
you've let someone down. But what I always said to the complainants as a prosecutor was, look, we can't control what the jury is going to come back with, but this is your opportunity to tell him exactly what he's done and the impact he's had on your life. And at least that gives some power back and enables a complainant to actually take that opportunity, because it's a pretty daunting process. I mean, no matter what side you're on, it changes you, right?
Yeah, I guess we sort of say similar things to our clients as well, right? You put everything out there, they decide what they decide. We've got no control over the decision. But I suppose it's harder saying that to somebody who's just got 10 years in prison.
Yeah.
And I think as well, just talking about being on the other side of that too, Kirsten, because I think when you're prosecuting, it's a bit harder because when it becomes he said, she said, it's quite often going to be a not guilty, even though that's often not quite the right result. So I'm often getting a complainant ready for a negative verdict, even though I know I believe she's telling the truth, absolutely. But I'll be like, juries are juries, and there is reasonable doubt, and it's a high standard. And so I think that's part of it too. But you have a bit more distance as a prosecutor, whereas when it's your client, you're much closer to them. And so it makes it much more personal, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does.
What do you say in that conversation where someone's just been found guilty of a serious crime and you have to go down and see them and they're popping off to prison now, and they walked into court that morning? What's your conversation like?
Yeah, it's just such a gutting conversation to have. And just thinking back to a recent guilty verdict, that unfortunately guilty on a rape charge, which, as you say, is a long time in prison. At that point, you just giving them some space just to express how they're feeling and say, look, we'll be looking at the avenues, but at this point in time, there's just not much you can say, right? It's an awful, awful situation.
Nothing you
Yeah.
say is going to be what they want to hear at that point, right? Which is you can walk out of there, this is a really bad dream. Joke's on you, ha ha. I mean, I'm making fun of it, but that's literally what they want to hear is your worst nightmare has not come true. You can walk out, hello, freedom.
Yeah, no, it's brutal. It is brutal.
You guys both do prosecutions and defense. I've only ever done defense. Do you think it is worse dealing with a complainant who's, the trial's just found the defendant not guilty, or do you think it's worse dealing with a defendant who's been found guilty?
Well, I guess as a prosecutor, you're tending not to be dealing with the complainant in the same kind of way, right?
Yeah.
They give their evidence.
And then they often go home and don't come back for the rest of the trial.
It's really rare that they come back. So it's harder. Oh, look, all of it's hard, right? But if someone's going to be going to prison for a really long time, there's just not that many words that can make that sit well.
If anyone asked me, I would say that's the hardest part of the job is that conversation when someone's just about off to prison. Can you think of another thing that you would describe as the hardest part of the job?
The hardest part of the job, I think the hard parts of our job are when you're in the thick of a trial and you're dealing with the defendant and you're dealing with the defendant's family and the pressures of jury trials, which kind of is what we love. That's why we're doing it. But so you're in that space where there's a lot of pressures on you, but you're also trying to run a practice as well, and all the other things that are going on in your life. So that it's a hard way to make a living, but it's also incredibly rewarding. But I think it is that the constant juggle of you're in trial, so therefore that's your focus, but you've also got sort of other pulls on your time as well. I think that's a tricky aspect of what we do.
Yeah, I mean, every client thinks that their file is the most important, right? And whether you've got 20 clients or 400 clients, they are the most important person. And if a client calls, you've just got to deal with it. If their mother calls, you just got to deal with it. If their girlfriend calls, you just got to deal with it. And then if you're in trial, I'm always like, I've been in court for 8 hours, but now I've got 8 more hours of work to do because I haven't been doing the work that I would do if I was in the office. Trying to manage a practice from afar can be a real nightmare. Like your junior's not picking up the phone and you're getting text from a duty lawyer that some client's been arrested. And then, you get a text saying your kid's sick and needs to be picked up from school.
Yeah.
And you're still standing on your feet, cross-examining, going, everything is turning to a shit show, but this guy's going to go to prison if I don't just get on with it. The amount of juggling there is ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. It is, especially when you add in the family side of things and kids and everything that comes with parenting and young kids and getting them to all the extracurricular activities that they seem to be doing, Yeah.
I'd love to be able to say, Judge, I can't deal with this. I just need to take my kid to basketball. Could we, just come back tomorrow? I'm going to lose my shit. I can't deal with this right now, Judge.
Can you think of a day that you would think is one of your worst days on the job, Kirsten?
if I think back to my days as a junior prosecutor, I started out in Timaru. I think it was actually the first time I cross-examined anybody in a court setting. And this guy had been charged with growing cannabis for supply. And he, of course, said the cannabis he had was for his personal use.
Personal.
Yeah, and he'd bought this house that was literally dedicated to growing cannabis. There was nothing else in it. It was like a $13,000 house in Oamaru back in the day. And I was cross-examining him, and he had a QC at that time acting for him, as it was back then. And I was just getting kicked around the courtroom. Like it was so bad. And I was almost in tears as I was cross-examining him, and I was looking to the Crown Solicitor who was my boss, and sort of give me something to work with here. And he's just like, he wrote down on this bit of paper, keep going.
Like
that was it, right?
Yeah.
And so I have that memory of just like that was brutal, but it's also that experience that you just can't buy, right?
I know.
When you're just like, okay, that was bad, but I'm going to learn from that. I think the bad days these days are more the sort of just the constant churn, because I love the trial work. I really love trial work. And if you're trialing, then that's your focus, and nothing else really kind of matters at that point.
Yeah, totally agreed.
What about you, Annabel? Worst story?
Your LexisNexis legal research and AI technology experience is now even more powerful with Lexis plus AI, now with Protege, your personalised AI assistant that will transform your legal work. Find out more today at lexisnexis.co.nz. Now, back to the episode.
Well, I think things are easier now too. Like as you get more senior, the judges give you an easier time. Like if you say something now, judges will sort of a little bit more listen. But it was when you're a junior and your client's given you some cock and bull story, and you have to put that to the court, and you have some judge going, "Oh, come on, Ms. Cresswell, do you expect this court to believe?" And you're sort of standing there going, "Oh, my client's watching, but the judge thinks I'm an idiot," and that sort of thing. But you're right, it changes as you carry on.
Yeah, it really does.
What's the biggest mistake you've made in court, Annabel, that you can think of?
Well, first of all, the Law Society are listening, so we won't be admitting any actual mistakes. But I think definitely in terms of technique, some of the biggest things that I've learnt are that you can stop the prosecutor from doing stuff. So I didn't realise in my very first jury trial, the prosecutor just brought in new stuff and brought in her opinion of things. It was a drug one as well. It was also a house where there was a lot of cannabis for personal use. And our defense was like, we smoke loads of cannabis a day. And so trying to bring out this information that showed like that we're a really big weed smoker. And the prosecutor was just kind of elaborating on what was happening, but I didn't know that I could get up and say, this hasn't been disclosed, this is new information. Or I probably did know, but was too scared and she just walked all over me. And then my client afterward was like, are you a moron? And I was a bit like, retrospectively, yes. But at the time, you can't really say that. So I think just not having a massive pair of balls was the biggest mistake I had early on, but I have them now.
And some, I imagine.
Yeah. Who else wants to admit a mistake?
Some of the mistakes that you make at the beginning are not explaining things to defendants in particular. I remember the first time I led evidence from this defendant, and it was a rape case where he was well off script, and the stuff that I just never heard him mention anywhere before. And afterwards, the judge said to me, well, Ms. Gray, you didn't put any of that material to the complainant. And it was like, no. There's nothing you can say to that either, because no, I didn't, because that was the first time I've ever heard it.
Yes, and you can't say that. You can't go, he just told me that now.
Yeah, it's just
I would have liked to put that to the complainant, Your Honour, but it came as a surprise to me.
Yeah, so I think it's those conversations that, that you need to have with the defendant, saying things like, this is your brief. If you go off your brief and I haven't put this to the complainant, it's going to look really bad for me. And what the prosecutor will say is that I didn't put it because I didn't know about it. And that's pretty much the situation. So, it's those kind of backing it up conversations that you need to have to explain the process, because it's such a weird process when you think about it, right?
Yes. Good God. If you think about the fact even that the jury are pulled out of a ballot, it's the 1500s.
I know, it's so funny.
That first day, I've got so much better at explaining the first day of trial, because there'll be impaneling and there'll be this and this weird thing happens, and then juries will get up and they'll go and whisper to the judge. They're normally saying, I can't leave my work. I'm a doctor and it's flu season, but they don't know why the jurors are going up and whispering. And then the other one is the defendant doesn't really have to talk throughout the trial, except for on day one where they have to say not guilty.
Not guilty.
And I used to always forget to tell them that they have to say that.
Yeah. I still forget.
Well, because you want them to be prepared, and you also want them to be able to say it in a voice that sounds like they've got some conviction behind that, not guilty.
Outraged, like it's the first time they've heard it. So I kind of think we have a duty to believe. I always think this sounds very implausible, but what if you are telling the truth? And there has always been that moment. Like I had a client recently, who, not recently, but in the last few years, who was like, the police are out to get me. The police have got a file on me. Like he was so obviously paranoid. And I had a private investigator go and check a few things out. And the private investigator said to me, you do realise the police are out to get him and they've got a file on him. And I was like,
really?
Okay. Yeah. It's like, you're not a paranoid schizophrenic. You're literally telling the truth. But because, you suspend your disbelief and you be that person that believes them, sometimes they are telling the truth.
Yeah, I remember actually, again, when I was prosecuting up in Auckland, there was a complainant was giving evidence about a violence matter, and she was crying as she was giving her evidence. And I was like, I don't know, those tears, they don't look that real to me. And, you just find your internal voice going, yeah. So you kind of have that dialogue with yourself. And as the trial progressed, the police found some film that had been put in a microwave, and they were able, during the course of the trial, to salvage the film. And the film had a recording of the incident, and it was horrific. That trial ended up being aborted, but it absolutely proved everything that she was saying.
That she said, yeah.
And so from that, I was just like, I'm just suspending any judgment, this is not my decision. I've got a job to do. And don't get into that kind of, do I believe, don't I believe? Judge, because that's not, thank God, that's not our job.
Yeah. Yes. And my motto is, let's go with that. Yeah. That's what you say. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
Do you think, thinking back to, baby Kirsten and baby Annabel that started out, do you think that you are more cynical or more compassionate, or how's that changed you?
I mean, menopause has kicked in a little bit along the way, so
the rage.
Yeah, the rage.
Ragey, we'll go with that.
No, I think I'm much more compassionate than I was. And I think that's because I started as a prosecutor, right? And so, I loved prosecuting. I would have done it for nothing. I loved it. Seriously, I loved it. And it's very black and white when you're prosecuting. And then I think the defence work just makes you realise that there is just so much grey, and there is so much trauma, and there's so much upbringing that you don't see unless you actually know people that come from that background, and that gives you compassion, right? Because I always ask my clients, okay, so have you been physically abused, have you been sexually abused? And it's got to be up well over half, probably closer to 80-90% of the guys that we deal with have had traumatic upbringings.
Absolutely.
And it just blows your mind. And I think that gives you an understanding of why a lot of people offend. I mean, it doesn't justify it, but you kind of get to see how things play out.
It's empathy, right? As opposed to sympathy. And you can't learn that.
Yeah.
Well,
and
I don't know. I feel like she just did explain
as in
how
like
you
can't
learn
learn. No, as in like you can't learn that from a textbook. That comes from experience, is what I mean.
It just blows your mind, some of the stuff that
Yes.
clients have been through, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What kind of cases do you struggle with the most?
I mean, the sex cases are always tricky from that he said, she said perspective. And there's the cases that involve children, that's a real struggle. But a lot of what we do is not necessarily going to trial.
I think sometimes the cases that don't go to trial can be just as difficult or, traumatizing. I had this one client who, like, I remember that her birthday was exactly a month before mine. Like, I don't know why I remember this. And she had a daughter who was around the same age as mine. And she was charged as a party to some sex offending because she got her then boyfriend to do some stuff on her daughter and her daughter to do some stuff on her boyfriend. And it didn't go to trial. She pleaded guilty, but every time I talked to her, she just kept going on about what a good mother she was and how me as a mother would understand her position as a mother about providing the best for her child. But I sometimes think those cases that don't go to trial can be just as difficult and traumatizing as the ones that go to trial, but for different reasons.
And I guess with those conversations where you have a client who is pleading guilty and is spouting that kind of dribble, I just say to them, look, you can tell me this all day long, but the reality is if you say it to a pre-sentence report writer, it's going to be given to a judge and a judge is going to read it and they're just going to see that you can't recognise what you've done as wrong and that there's no remorse and that you are a real danger and that is absolutely going to come back and bite you. So I think you can have those conversations with clients where you're explaining again that process and saying the factors that are going to be taken into consideration in your sentencing are these things.
You can go, this is what a prosecutor is going to say to you in cross-examination and then say exactly what you're thinking.
I find that so much fun.
Yeah. If I was cross-examining you right now.
Yeah, this is what I would say. How do you guys leave work behind? I know everyone's got their own ways, but how do you personally switch off?
Coming home to children who absolutely
don't care about what you do.
who want to tell you about whatever the latest thing that's happening at school or whatever their latest craze is or whatever. I think that's a good reality check.
Annabel, what about you? How do you switch off?
Yes, the children thing. Like, honestly, if it's real bad, I go to bed with my laptop and watch something like a series. Might take a gin and tonic into the boudoir with me for that. But the kids even say it. They go, oh, mum's gone to bed with her laptop. It's been a bad day or a bad week. It's actually happens a lot in the school holidays.
Yeah, I think definitely the kids. Lots of gin and tonic. Like, I find being around friends and family that don't care what I do.
Talking to girlfriends is the best thing. One thing to unload. I do find, like, I really obviously like my partner and father of my children.
Some days.
He's a man, and sometimes I get it that he doesn't give me sometimes I need to go and just unload with a bunch of women, laugh, cry, moan, listen to their problems. Yeah, and trauma dumping. And then you feel like I'm done.
Kind of feel like that after this. Yeah, this is
great. This was not like a job.
I'm like, why do you need to pay for a therapist when you could just like get together, the people that you want to trauma dump with?
Yeah, let's just get on the VMR with Kirsten after a shitty day from now on.
Yeah, let's just FaceTime.
Do it.
We should have a weekly FaceTime. You know?
Oh my God, this is your fan talking.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so just to kind of wrap this up on a slightly more positive tone than the trauma dumping, what's the best advice you've been given throughout your career?
Yes, well, a few, but my old male mentor who doesn't talk to me now, but he did teach me a lot as we went, and he said, there were a couple of things he said, but he said, never underestimate the power of talking. Like, your clients need you to explain things, so much. So it's like, look them in the eye and explain it properly. And the other thing he said was this, and I think I've even said this on the podcast before, but he always said, remember, you're dealing with people on the worst day of their lives. So always keep that in your mind. Oh, and don't make it worse for them. The late, great, Gavin Boot said that to me. Just don't make it worse for them. That's the main thing to remember.
I love that.
That's amazing.
Like, I started as a prosecutor, right? So, doing trials, and we were trialing, maybe 10, 20 trials a year. And they just literally just let us go. And I think it was just that freedom just to go and to get good at the craft and have that amazing collegiality of the other prosecutors, because it was a truly special time, I think. And I guess that translates into just keep doing the work. Like, it's an amazing opportunity that you have as a trial advocate to do trials and just take the opportunities. Yeah.
Like the note that dude wrote.
Yeah,
we need to call this episode Keep Going.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Literally the best advice.
Yeah, that is the advice, right?
Yeah. I think something that sticks with me is like, within the law, you can always find a solution. It's just that you've sometimes got to look a little bit harder, but never take no for an answer. And that's something I've sort of taken with me to go, if I want to make something happen, I feel like I just need to find the way to do it. And I just need to explain to the judge why they can do it.
It's a bit of a defense invoked by rapists. So also, like,
not necessarily.
You mean
not necessarily. Like, if it's a type of sentence that I want, or if it's a pre-trial where I'm challenging a piece of evidence or something, like, within the law, there's always an argument to run. Be more solution focused to get to the right result, and there's lots of different avenues to get there. And you get a lot of knockbacks. Don't get me wrong. It's not a linear line here. But I feel like that's something I sort of carry through with me.
Yeah, and that just makes me think, actually, as you said that, the cases that we're doing and being defence lawyers, we don't have the joy of the police force or the funds of the state, really, right? And so I think that there is always avenues to just look for the right expert, because that's something that you must utilise as if there's an avenue, right? You just keep looking and keep finding the right expert, because it's the little things that can actually make a difference in trial.
I think that's another thing. Like, I feel like using people that are good at what they do allows me to do what I do well. So I know some lawyers, like, it's like using private investigators or experts, and I'm just like, they can do what they're good at, which allows me to do what I'm good at. And we should be utilizing that more. But I also get, there's funding restrictions, and if your client's legal aid, there's, cuts and all sorts of things like that. But yeah, this has been the best therapy session to date. Can I just say?
We maybe talked more than the person we were interviewing. So apologies if that is how that comes across. It's just trauma dumping on Kirsten Gray.
It's been fun, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. And it's been great to hear your stories.
We've loved having you.
Oh, Sumudu, I feel like that was just a yarn at the pub with a good girlfriend. How do you feel?
yeah, it felt like just catching up with girlfriends over a drink, which I guess
And
is what it was.
Yeah, and that apparently that was our first female. So the listeners have been
Yes.
complaining about us only having hot men on our podcast, which is audio.
And now we've got a hot woman on the podcast.
Well done to Kirsten. Really enjoyed that. And thank you. So good night to everyone. And don't forget to subscribe
Wherever you listen to your podcasts. And thank you to LexisNexis for sponsoring us.
Thank you for listening this far. Today's episode is brought to you by LexisNexis. Your LexisNexis legal research and AI technology experience is now even more powerful with Lexis Plus AI, now with Protégé, your personalised AI assistant that will transform your legal work. Find out more today at lexisnexis.co.nz.